Nothing
I
is wrong with that anyway. Yeah,
I so just one question.
sure.
Remember couple sessions ago you had mentioned about having a
Yeah.
face-to-face potential last class. Is that still
Yeah,
on the
that's not a
table?
problem. Yeah, sure, that's not a problem. We just have to kind of agree on a date and time. That's not a problem with me, right? If we had taken May, and we just have 3 sessions again, we could probably do like a review. And I know we were trying to do it in March, but maybe it could fit into April if the exam is the 7th of May. Like come out on a Sunday, right? We make a half day out of it. Um, I know since the pandemic, a lot of us have gotten, but we have been doing training, face to face since the pandemic ended anyway. But it's just a kind of come out. I mean, you don't have to overdress for those who know if it's adults anyway. Come out. I wouldn't say as you are, but come out kind of fairly okay. And we could have a good session maybe from about 8:30 to about 12, right? On a Sunday morning. Not a problem with me, right? I will try to organize that for you all. I'll try to see what Sunday we can probably get that done in, right? But I think we'll be finished. And then you see that Sunday could actually be spent on, like I said, questions and answers, right? And like how to answer a question and physically giving you one to do, having you write it, having you bring it up. That's how we used to do it. It's not a big class anyway. Having you bring it up, to kind of get it corrected anyway. And I did a series of that in Guyana when I was there, series of questions and answers like that, right? Of course, like I said, you had to work on things like your speed. Sometimes the only way to go through that is to go through it. It's like to really do what I'm telling you to do, like do a question in 10 minutes time. And then you sort of understand the challenge you're faced with on that day, right? You're going to have to get your pens. They do provide an examination booklet, so you don't have to come with any paper. Pens, maybe pencil, maybe a calculator. Not too sure what would need calculating. There's not too much of calculation questions, but it may be best to sort of come with a calculator as well, right? They don't allow the phones in the room, no smart devices, no smartwatch, no smart nothing, right? Is allowed in the room. If anybody have any, you know, uh, anyway, that's something else. I was going to say something else, but let me just leave it there with the electronic devices, right? So we are way down here. I had a look at it today, and but literally, like I said, the last chapter is logistics. That could finish on Sunday, but I feel I'll make 2 sessions out of it again, right? Sunday and next week, Wednesday, to sort of make it to probably do some questions. Today is just an hour. We can probably just try to finish as much as we could finish today anyway, right? But some Wednesdays we have actually done past papers. We have actually looked at some past papers and stuff as well, right? Passing this exam, I think, still is, the most challenging it have now, right? I was sharing with our class last night that I'm not sure if NEBO should go back to written exams, right? Seeing the pandemic is, but NEBO is harder to pass. Some of us came through that system. Some of us was here when it had the written exam. It was always 2 hours. It was always 11 questions. It was always hard to pass. But the book exam did make things a little bit easier, right? And of course, a lot of us would have attained the qualification during the pandemic means of testing anyway. Right? So today we're an emergency response. I should have probably said this before, but the thing is the view on Zoom. Let me just try to get this down here. Because we are way down here anyway. Right? So if we could take it. We actually did some of this on Sunday as well. Right? Okay, so it's about here, right? Emergency response. Um very simple stuff. Very, very simple stuff. But I don't want to do it like that. I want you to kind of see it for yourself, right? So emergency response. Let me take it from here. We have key information. The emergency response need to be taught true for it to work when you need it. You need to assess the fire risk. Let me just bring it up a bit, right? An emergency plan covering things such as foreseeable emergencies. I just touching them because those are actually the headings coming up, right? To make provision for medical treatment and evacuation, to ensure evacuation routes are maintained in a state of readiness, to provide evacuation facilities in case the installation has to be abandoned. The use of lifeboats may be one example. A well-trained, disciplined emergency team that knows what it is doing with a clear command structure. You know, easier said than done. I mean, that comes with lots and lots of drills and probably lots and lots of experience, right, with the same team to practice response plans and learn from mistakes, right? And so I'll read a bit. I read it all today. I read all of it today, preparing for you all. But I said I wouldn't tell you all because that is kind of robbing you all of really getting it for yourself, right? So emergencies can and do happen. Emergency response preparedness is essential. It saves lives and minimizes damage to property and the environment by bringing things under control quickly. A strategy to prevent major accidents can be conveniently broken down into three parts: identification of an installation as a major hazard installation. That's actually something from the UK laws anyway, but I'll just take it from there. This usually entails notification to the authorities based on the regulatory criteria, type of activity, and/or inventory of hazardous chemicals. I wouldn't rely on the pre-knowledge, right? We'll just take it from there, right? But that's something from one of the laws in the UK, right? Identification of an installation as a major hazard installation. That is a law called COMA. Prevention and control. After assessing the likely risk, putting in place effective measures to control them. Mitigation, which is where emergency planning comes in to help minimize the effects of major accidents that do occur despite the controls. So emergency response plan, ERP, role and importance. You would remember from Element 1 the need for emergency plans as part of the safety cases, if you all remember that. A written emergency response plan communicates to all parties what action to take, who will take it, and the resources needed for all likely emergencies and subsequent cleanup operation. It means that emergencies have been thought of through before they happen. That's the idea of the first learning outcome foreseeable emergency plans. Let me see again. Prompt action in emergency makes all the difference between an incident and a catastrophe. A written emergency plan also provides documentary evidence of preparedness to regulators, especially in the case of the legislation, like the law I mentioned here, COMA, right? The Control of Major Accident Hazard Regulation. Of course, they have more than one law in the UK for everything and anything. They also have the, for offshore activities, under the Offshore Installation Safety Case Regulation 2005, and the Prevention of Fire and Explosion Emergency Response PFEER on Offshore Installation Regulation 1995, right? So just in case you kind of lost right there, all they're saying there is the laws say to have an emergency response plan, right? I tell you, I could have break it down for you all, but I didn't want to rob you of the reading, right? So that's all they say in the laws are saying to have an emergency response plan, right? If anybody kind of new to this course, new to NEBOSH itself, once they have a regulation, they will have something called a guide to the regulation. These things are really booklets that are free. You can get them on the HSE website, right? I'll say that again. In England, once they have a regulation, they write a booklet for it, right? The logic there is that not everybody will have time to read a law. Like, who really reads a law? Nobody, right? Nobody really download a law and read it. So they write like a pamphlet for it, they write like a guidance for it, HSG 191, right? And these are the booklets that are more kind of reader friendly or user friendly. There are pictures in them and there are headings and whatever have you. But these things would explain, if you look at it, emergency planning for major accidents, these things would explain like what the regulations want and like what COMA wants, the Control of Major Accident Hazard Regulation, without actually reading the law itself. You could read like a pamphlet, booklet, brochure on it, and that is what they call HSGs. Just in case you're new again, and because we almost finished the course anyway, all of those things are free. You get them on the HSE website, right? You just have to go to Google, put in HSE website, and a search bar will come as like an intranet in Google. So another page will open up with a search bar. Whatever you're looking for in life, not just things like this, whatever safety concern you're looking for, parking, signage, risk assessments, accident prevention, whatever you're looking for in your safety journey, the HSC website have a booklet on it. And they are very powerful booklets, right? So that's what you're seeing here. For more information, we can refer to HSG 191. And they did say it is a guidance to the regulation. I also have some standards as well. So you can look at those, but the booklets are nice. I mean, the booklets are color coded and diagrams and pictures and stuff, right? So what I'll do with this one, I'll just read some of the headings, the contents of an emergency response plan. So an emergency response plan needs to be specific to the installation, covering operational and procedural needs for such emergency situation. The detail will therefore vary, but will generally consider such things as what is your emergency, right? So what is your foreseeable emergency, right? For some people it's different. I guess if you're on a platform or offshore platform, it would definitely be something else, right? Severe storms. If you're from Trinidad, or if you're from Guyana and you're on land, that may not really be a concern then, right? And but I mean, if you're on a chemical, I mean, 'cause we have lots of oil-based, like land-based wells anyway in Trinidad. If you are on, of course, we have natural gas, we have ammonia and stuff. So, what is your emergency? Is it a gas release? Is it a gas spill? Trinidad, you could probably think about maybe foreseeable emergencies could actually be trespassers, violence, right? Those kind of things. Some countries that might not be what they would consider as a foreseeable emergency. But what do you do then in the event of a spill? What do you do in the event of a chemical release? What do you do in the event of a trespass on your compound? Those may be your foreseeable emergencies. We kind of stick to oil and gas. I wouldn't go off too much on crime and whatever have you, but those are the things that could possibly be a foreseeable emergency in Trinidad, right? So what are or who will take up the organizational roles, authority, responsibilities, and expertise? So once you identify what is your emergency, flooding, earthquake, fire, terrorist threat, chemical release, crime, right? Once identify what is your emergency, the next thing is who will take charge, right? Remember that there are different people, and I would leave it for the notes to talk about it. You will see them, different people who take part in an emergency. I'll just call some simple people like the first aider, the fire marshal, right? You'll see them as we go down into the thing here. For example, emergency response team, incident command structure, and that's actually one of the persons there. One of the persons in charge, maybe the incident commander, right? The other thing is after you figure out who will take charge is how would they take charge, right? So emergency response procedures, like what do you do then? What do they do? What does the incident commander do? What does the first aider do? What does the fire watch do? What does the fire marshal do? What does the who again could be part of it? Well, it depends on the site. If it's an offshore site, may have other persons, kind of coordinating, right? Main controller and stuff like that. So what procedures are they following then, right? So in other words, then in the event of an emergency, after you say what needs to be done, who needs to do it, is how they will get it done. You just wouldn't want everybody running, you know, um, in all directions and who is the roll caller? They don't know, what procedure do you use to get back, work to normal, you don't know. So there'll be a procedure, right? So these need to consider each situation from detection and raising the alarm to the point at which the emergency has been controlled, if this is possible, and all personnel are in a safe place. Procedures may be required for emergency shutdown, right? Cleanup, decontamination, and for the process to restart. The point is, you have to follow a procedure, right? So next thing, you want to make sure you have enough resources, manpower, equipment, money, that sort of thing, right? So people, equipment, materials, including any specialists or specialized emergency response equipment. Maybe if there is the automated external defibrillator, what they would charge and put on somebody in the event of like a heart failure. I mean, that's a specialist equipment, but then you also need specialist people to actually use it as well, right? are thinking of a chemical spill. I mean, these things may not be class as specialist equipment, but I guess they could be like a bond. You have different size bonds. Some of them, could actually be like, okay, like a buoy. Then you could, if it's something on offshore, you could use like a buoy and contain the oil. And then from there, you have your pumps, you have your hose, you have your probably secondary, flotation, like structures then, flotation vessels that will come by and sort of, take the oil anyway, right? So all of those may be classed as sufficient equipment, sufficient resources, right? From the simple thing as a first aid kit then to as complicated as, um, like chemicals they use for cleaning up. I don't know if you all know them. Some of those chemicals are biodegradable. I don't know if you all know. I mean, there are lots of it now, right? There are chemicals you could apply to oil. Once you contain oil on the surface of water, you could suction the oil and the water. But then there may be some residue and it may be possible to use, like a biocide or a bioagent that would actually attack and eat the oil, right? And so there are those sort of um agents today then, right? Bacteria that has been grown specifically for that purposes anyway. So whatever can be classed as specialist material, specialist equipment there, right? Evacuation procedure, proper communication, typically by radio, right? I'll read this one, including between emergency responders by radio, internal and external regulatory incident reporting, calling external help, escalation, and dealing with the media. So when are all those things done? And who has to do it? All of that would be in a procedure, or should be, right? Like there should be a time then when the person in charge realizes that this disaster is too much for us, right? And you'll know that. You know when you see, okay, like your efforts, have not been enough to contain the spill or whatever, then it should be that the company, of course, that doesn't really happen in Trinidad too much. Most of the times when things get to the media, it's because people reported that, like everyday citizens are reporting oil in the river, oil in Coffee Beach, or one of those South beaches anyway, right? And of course that shouldn't be, right? It should be that there is a time when the incident commander realizes, that okay, this oil it's from such and such barrel of tank or whatever have you. We don't have the capacity to handle that. So we need to get the fire services involved. We need to get the EMA involved in Trinidad and Tobago here. We need to get the ODPM involved. We need to get regional corporation involved, right? Um, of course, most regional corporations don't have, at least they say they don't have enough money. No, but that's not the point. The point is you need to get them involved anyway, right? Training for personnel and drills to test the plan. We'll discuss some of these later in more detail. The only way really to get people competent and brave in an emergency is to do a drill, right? There is no shortcut. There is no shortcut. You could think of it as riding a bicycle then. Like there is no shortcut. There's no, well, like whatever you do, right? Because I do skateboarding, but there's no amount of theory then about riding a skateboard or cycling that you could do to learn how to cycle or to ride a skateboard or whatever you all do, rock climbing or whatever have you, right? Different things people do anyway, or riding a horses. I actually do that as well. Yeah, like real horses, right? Haven't done so in a long time though, but horses kind of, yeah, they be kind of careful with horses, right? Horses do some crazy things sometimes. But the thing is there's no book and video then. Like, and that's the thing with a drill, right? Like there is no theoretical plan. And so the only way to get your team competent, I don't know if anybody ever did this from scratch. It's not always as easy as it is then. Like if you're planning an emergency drill, it's not always easy. The first thing you have to do is train your team, right? And your team have to know what to do. The first aider have to know what to do. The fire marshal have to know what to do. The roll callers have to know what to do. The incident commander have to know what to do. If you're getting fire services involved, You need to give that proper time when fire services should be called, right? And but doing it builds the confidence and the experience. I know a lot of companies have done it, those who are here. But some companies cannot do it on a theoretical basis. But like the better companies are the ones who I've actually seen companies do, like they ask people to volunteer to be casualties, and you try to move somebody, you try to move a human being there, not a dummy, because there's a difference. There's a difference in moving a dummy doll than moving a person. There are techniques then. There are techniques to move human beings, right? There are position, there are techniques, and nothing could really prepare for that but doing a drill itself, right? So in the words of B.A. Baracus from the A-Teams, he would say that I would pity the fool who doesn't do a drill, right? Because the drills help you to really prepare. And again, if you've ever been in an emergency and you have done drills regularly, effective drills, then you would see how different you would react to that emergency anyway, right? But yeah, I do pity the fool. There are some people who there's a phrase on B.A. Baracus, and not really my phrase. Those of us who know Mr. T from of the 80s, um, you know, um, like I've been coming across. Remember, and a lot of this I think to have to do with the open book exam. A lot of NEBOSH people are coming out with NEBOSH now and they don't know what they're doing, right? And so that's what I'm saying is like as somebody who are here then in terms of a company, try to get a drill done. If you're in a company and they haven't done one for the year, try to get one done. It's never perfect, but then you learn from it now, you learn from it, right? So, because the incidents may well require the intervention of external resources, emergency services, regulatory agencies, either to assist with on-site, or if the incident extends off-site, should be consulted on the development of the emergency plan for the site installation. By the way, these people are often willing to help. I don't know if you all know that. At least the last time I dealt with them, um, have you all ever dealt with them? Those of us in safety here, regional cooperation is willing to help as all my dealings with them. Fire services are very willing to help in your plan. I'm not too sure how effective the ODPM is anymore, but that's because I don't really deal with them. I'm not too sure how, at time they were very vibrant, right? The ODPM was very, very vibrant, but I know they were willing to help. I know EMA willing to help. IME, these people are willing to help, as if you as a safety here or a budding person in safety field, brave enough to contact them. I have found them very willing to help. Anybody can think of any other Arrive Alive? Anybody deal with them? Arrive Alive? No? I just letting you all know, these entities are very willing to help, right? And I don't think you have to pay them. I'm not too sure if they pay ODPM. I don't think so. EME and I don't think so. I don't think you have to pay them, right? They're very much willing to help anyway, right? Anyway, hopefully you all took some advice there. So in the UK, there's a statutory duty to consult, and in such cases, if installations are connected, example by pipeline, as in the case of some offshore rigs such as Piper Alpha, these installations should consult with each other and coordinate their response plan, which they didn't do, right? Since the Piper Alpha incident, additional safety precautions have been required. For example, emergency shutdown devices. Let me break this down a little bit. Shutdown valves fitted to a platform receiving oil gas from another platform. As I did tell you that before, if you didn't remember, Piper Alpha was a manifold. A manifold meaning there were lots of pipelines then bringing oil to that platform from other rigs anyway, right? Fire and explosion strategy. So a fire and explosion strategy is the output of a process which evaluates fire and explosion scenarios and the mitigation measures needed. In other words, it is a record of a specific fire and explosion risk assessment and may simply be an integral part of a wider risk assessment for the entire installation rather than a separate document. As with all risk assessment, complex cases would require more detailed computer-based dispersion modeling. I think we came across that in another lesson, whereby simple cases are more likely to rely on industry standard codes of practice. Evaluations would typically consider what is the foreseeable fire and explosion, cellulosic hydrocarbon pool and hydrocarbon jet type fires, if those things are possible on your plant, right? The likelihood of occurrence and likely severity, which may depend on, and this is the risk. Likelihood of occurrence and severity, that is the risk, right? Location, so accommodation, process module, heli deck, etc. The nature of the gas liquid that you are dealing with, other related issues such as human factors, how people behave in a fire or explosion. Well, you're not supposed to behave anyway in a fire explosion. I mean, what you're talking about is really what is your reaction? What is your reaction, right? I don't think human beings have the potential to stand in fire, right? But they're talking about your reaction to the fire then, right? And from what they have said here, well, not here, but what the theory is that human behaviors are complicated, right? The way you would behave in an emergency is not how I would behave, right? I mean, I've been through some. I'm not saying I'm brave in any way because that came about from years of being in it. But, I have handled death before, twice. I have handled guns before, probably twice as well, right? One with somebody being stabbed, a policeman being stabbed, fights, like men fighting in a company, right? Men fighting, slashing one another hands, right? So I've been around some stuff then. I've been around, oil spills, gas releases, um, accidents, vehicle turnovers, crushing hands, come to think of it, right? It's never nice, but having gone through it now, it's like my behavior in an emergency may not be one to panic. I think I think the word brave wasn't the word to use. I think the word is always scared, but you still know what to do. You're always afraid then. There's always a fear factor, but you still know what to do, right? But the theory behind human behavior in fire, when they say how people will behave in a fire, is that what they have realized is that people's behavior are unpredictable. Who knows what I will do? Who knows? Because nobody really know when you're in it then, right? So sometimes what they say is that trained persons may behave irrational. And if your trained incident commander is behaving irrational, what are you going to do then? Right? So remoteness of the installation, proximity of external help, um, you know, uh, I guess if you are far away from help and you are the only help it have, then what are you going to do? Right? So this evaluate, I hope never to be in those situations again. I think I had enough, you know, two is enough. Don't you think so? Don't you think so? I had two persons that died. Right? Two is enough. I really hope not to go through those things again. Just hope for good things now, right? So this evaluation would allow selection of the most appropriate fire explosion prevention and mitigation measures. Depending on the risk, this would then feed into the operational and procedural requirement for the emergency response plan. I think we covered alarms on Sunday enough already. There were manual alarms, there was the smoke detector, there was the heat detector, there was the gas detectors, right? So I think the idea here with the emergency plan, I'll just explain this one, is that alarms would be a part of the plan. The alarm will give, like a audible visual warning that something is off, some sort of upset condition has happened, and then that may trigger you out into your action. Um, just some guidance here. For example, just the European, this is British European, norm suggests the following standards for offshore installation. You could have a read of this. It's just a guide, like alarm type, toxic alarm, continuous signal of constant frequency. Because what is happening is a toxic release now, right? Flashing red in every area. And I'm sure you all have seen this in lots of movies and James Bonds and what is the last one? A lot of those movie type shows now that have emergencies, and you would get the idea, okay, if it's a yellow warning or red, of course, it's dangerous, right? I'm not too sure if you want to have a read of it. Most things you all know already. Probably, please read it. In fact, maybe I should read this one for you, right? I'm not too sure we'll have time to come back to it. So offshore installation are commonly have status lights or status lights. Green is normal. Yellow indicates low level alert, for example, like a gas release. Red indicates high level alert gas, release. Blue indicates abandon the platform or whatever your platform would attain to, because next thing your platform have a different color code anyway, right? Medical emergency planning. Medical emergencies would require prompt treatment. In planning, you will need to consider matters such as the range of likely medical emergencies on your plant. If you could ever predict those things, right? Major accidents, heart attacks, food poisoning, epidemics, right? Pandemics, minor injuries. I could think of so much more that I'm sure those of us who work here may have gone through some, right? It don't have to be always bad, eh? What I mean, they're not really good, but they don't have to be fatal then. Asthma attacks. Anybody ever come across any asthma attacks? What about just fainting? Workers who probably didn't eat, right? Or maybe it's just you. Maybe when I say just you now, you have been working shutdown type activities, lacking the sleep, right? Those things are very miserable. Anybody I know going on shutdown, I normally tell them make sure and take your vitamins. Some of them think I'm joking, right? But getting better vitamins, whatever you is best for you, right? But getting better vitamins to kind of boost your system up anyway. Because I have dealt with fainting. But what about things like what is not here? Um, Medical emergencies, like somebody may not have taken their medicine, right? You know, and I could give you some stories. I don't know if some of somebody's stories are public knowledge, but some of them may not be. So I wouldn't really call the company name. Some people have passed away, right? Because of medical emergencies, right? So health surveillance and stuff is very important, right? Health surveillance. If you have people working, on offshore platforms, onshore rigs and whatever, health assessments, health screening, health surveillance is very important. Do you all know that, folks? Do you all know that you need to protect your skin, you need to protect your tail, right? Some of these I could tell you all these stories, but I don't want to go back into much bad memory sometime, right? But you need to know then like what a worker is suffering from. Is it a bad back? Is it that the person have, some circulatory problem issues, right? Is it like a chronic condition? Some of these things, if you put them out there, then right, like somebody who have asthma and you put them out in the oil and gas field, exposure to hydrocarbon or whatever, the person mightn't make it back. You could get an asthma attack, and and that could be fatal, right? So you got to be so careful in terms of medical emergencies and planning for them. I really don't think you can plan for them if you don't know what you're dealing with. So that's what I was saying now, health surveillance. Do you know that workers don't say what is wrong with them, especially men? Do you know workers don't say what is wrong with them? Like they have a condition, but they wouldn't say. So you have to do the health surveillance. And then you're not going to fire anybody, right? I could think of two incidents. One, somebody died right in Trinidad here. The other one, the person survived, right? Um, one was asthma, the other one was diabetic complications. But people don't say then, right, what they are going through, right? And so if your company does a health surveillance and somebody, a medical check, then at some point, the drug test and the medical that goes with it, that doesn't mean fire the person in it. It means to take care of the person. So the OSHA and stuff says that, you have to take care of the health, safety, and welfare of the employees. But if you know the person has asthma, right? If you know the person is a diabetic, if you know the person have a circulatory problem, if you know the person have, what about this is another sad one, epilep like epileptic fits. What if the person is, has had epileptic fits, right? Or epilepsy, and of course they go into those fits conditions. So I've known workers that passed away with those things, right? And then when it happens, the company say, if we had known and if we had known. But I guess Trinidad and Guyana is different. We get away with a lot of craziness down here, right? Anyway, have a read of that. I kind of did it here for a bit for you, right? Need to transport, evacuate sick or injured person off-site medical facilities. But then how do you do that and who does it? First aid, advanced first aid, and then, how do you decide on now to carry the person, to the medical facility, right? Or the closest medical facility, laboratory, use of medics or paramedics. Of course, we do have, thank God for that, at Trinidad, we have a good 811 service now. We have a good ambulance service, right? We have a good ambulance service. Um, so based on traffic. Because the person that passed away, like with me, it wasn't too long ago, The person that passed away with me was a worker, first of all. It's probably 2020, or just the end of 2019, right? And it was in San Fernando, and the of course the hospital is also in San Fernando, but the ambulance took about half an hour to come. That's not always the case though, right? So your company needs to assess first aiders, advanced first aiders, medics if the risk is so then that you have to have medics around, which like Atlantic LNG has, right? And offshore facilities have, right? Exxon have, right? But then those people remain your lifeline then in the event of an emergency, right? The adequate number of trained first aiders. I'm not too sure if they will say that here, but there is like a guide to that. They say at least one first aider for every 50 persons. I'm not too sure if that would be here, but perhaps maybe a good thing is a first aider based on the risk then. So the higher the risk, the more first aiders you should have anyway, right? So the number and level of training required for first aiders depend on the level of risk from the activities, right? So I didn't really read it. I saw it. Well, I didn't, I know how it is, right? So that's exactly what they said here. But there is a guidance to the law for first aid in England, called the First Aid Regulation 1989. And it sort of said that you could survive with one first aider for every 50 employees. At least one first aider. That's what the law said. At least one first aider. At least actually means more than one, but at least one first aider for every 50 employees, right? Anyway, I think I'll go with my idea, which is the risk is often, you provide the first aiders based on the number of risk or the level of risk. And that should be the best thing to do, right? Folks, it's so easy today, listeners. I hope you all getting it. It isn't a hard lesson, but I'm still trying to make the effort not to I still try to read it for you now so that you get the learning out of it, right? Medical evacuation and backup. So a medical emergency may require evacuation of the injured to a secondary healthcare facility, i.e. offsite hospital, a tertiary healthcare facility, specialist hospital units such as for cardiac patient and severe burns. Procedure for evacuation need to be developed and would consider the health risk to the patient, the scale of the emergency, the resources required, and if they are available, vehicle to carry them, and accompanying trained personnel, including escorts such as first aiders this may be contracted out, as some of you here are, medics for, offshore companies and even onshore companies anyway. Evacuation may be by land, such as by an ambulance, sea or air. Some of you all do that here as well. Devon has a big part in that. Example, helicopter and air ambulance. And in such case, the vehicle, vessel, craft needs to be capable of accommodating and securing the patient and must be fitted with medical equipment, staff needed to stabilize the patient during the journey. You probably wonder what I'm thinking about. I was thinking about it had one last year. It had an emergency last year in Guyana. Anybody from Guyana in this class? Or are we all Trinidadians? It had one in Guyana last year. The person died there, so it's not really funny. But I'll just give you the end of the story. The person was being transported in an ambulance, and it wasn't secured now, like the stretcher wasn't secured, and it came out of the ambulance when the ambulance was going on the road, right? The person didn't survive, right? So it may sound simple as that, right? Like securing it now, right? Securing the patient must be fitted with medical equipment, but that's how it is anyway. As Devon would tell you, if Devon is here, Guyana is a bit on the crazy side, but they're coming up. They're coming up, right? They're coming up, right? They're very much like Trinidad, how Trinidad was, in the 80s anyway. Principles of safe evacuation and rescue in an emergency, time is of essence. Escape routes should therefore be designed to allow people to escape to a place of safety as quickly as possible. Thus, escape routes must be wide enough, about 1 meter wide. That's about the distance of your door, right? You must have sufficient number of escape routes. In case one is blocked, you should have another one, right? They call that redundancy, where you have more than one way. Watch it here, alternative routes. Well, you see, I start explaining now because it's after 7:15, so as I start to explain, right? Protected against the effects of fire and explosion. If you remember when we did this, Sunday, if you remember, passive fire protection. So the emergency route, the corridor, lots of things, right? Not just one thing, lots of things. It must be, I could tell you all in a, but I'll just tell you one because the other one, right? It must have sufficient lighting. It must have sufficient signage saying, emergency exit. It must have the arrows, must be properly signed, the green and white arrows, right? And the one we're looking at here, this one was what? This one was the emergency route, and it was a normal building. It should have been, probably protected against fire, maybe some sort of coating, some sort of sealant, right? It was an offshore facility, then it must have, maybe some sort of suppressant system, fire barriers, fire doors to limit the fire from one area to another area anyway, right? So emergency signs, emergency lighting, make sure make sure the emergency doors are could open outwards in the direction of travel. Make sure you have the correct fire extinguishers along the routes, free of obstructions anyway, right? Evacuation offsite for onshore facilities. Evacuation offsite is easily achieved by walking or land-based transport. Offshore evacuation options are the primary method. This would preferably use the normal non-emergency method by ship if transport is normal by ship to the installation. Secondary method, the primary method may not always be available, like a backup vessel, so a backup method is needed. For example, survival craft, lifeboats, etc. Tertiary method, these are the final options and would include personnel equipment such as life jacket, life rafts, and survival suits. These are not without risk. Jumping into the sea from high up can cause injury or death. Personnel may need to be recovered from the sea once you get down into the sea, and may have very limited survival time in hostile sea weather conditions if it's cool, hypothermia, or exhaustion. plus maybe whatever you jump could have caused some damages and stuff if that was not a drill then where you practice some sort of jump or dive off your vessel anyway. I was gonna read all of this for you, but I'm watching the time now. Oh, we almost finished. There's a summary right there now. Okay, but I think what I could tell you here is that what it have here, it have the people to take charge in the event of the emergency. Um, so I would recommend that you learn some of these, right? And you could learn the ones that you want to learn. When I mean want to learn is like, a NEBOSH question is like 4 marks. So you could already go with people like the first aider, the medic. You could always go with those anyway. And they could have about 4 or 5 more here, right? Some of you may know the first one already, the incident commander. So I don't know if did I leave anything out? Yes, I did, right? So the role of the persons in the team, right? So the incident controller or commander, this person takes on site control of the incident because of the wide-ranging site knowledge needed. This role is usually held by a site manager or very experienced supervisor would cover constantly maintained. The incident commander will set up close to the incident and will determine if the incident of which they have been notified is serious, assume some main controller responsibilities. And the main controller could actually be somebody else too. If they are absent to ensure external emergency services are alerted, alarms have been activated. The point is, the incident commander is the person that's taking charge. But I like how I could at least get 4 then, right? So they have incident controller, they have the main controller. The main controller has overall responsibility and will usually be stationed in the emergency control center in a safe location. Again, the role requires somebody that is experienced, right? Good knowledge of the site installation and seniority, such as a site manager or offshore installation manager with contingency backup. The incident commander will assume some of the main controller responsibilities and kind of vice versa anyway. So I like how they have it. What I would advise you all is that when you're learning these, just try to think about maybe like when you think of the 4 of them, think about like what they do, like what does the incident commander do, right? And it right there, and if you can't think of it, you can just read this and you can get it. So when to call the fire services or the person takes charge. If you have seen any movies, which we all have, of a hostage situation, and then you see, the star comes in and the star takes charge, and the star actor then takes charge of what has happened because that person is the one in charge, right? But I do like how they mention, like I said here, the main controller keeping the incident under review as it develops, making sure casualties are being treated, liaising with external agencies, the Coast Guard, emergency rescue, fire brigade, police, right? Just pick one from it now, right? And you can learn that one as we go down into the rest of them anyway, right? So these are emergency response and fire team members. So while the incident commander or controller and the major controller are technically part of the team, they are the people who will actually be doing the tasks such as firefighting, search and rescue, administering first aid, rather than directing the operation. Obviously, they need to be competent and fit to perform their assigned duties, right? They also mentioned, so that's 3. So I've given you 4 now. The offshore installation manager, the OIM, right? I do think it's a good question. That doesn't mean it will come. I'm just saying, in the event of an emergency, plan then, like who are the people who will take charge? Incident commander, controller, right? The um firefight, but not firefighter, but like a fire marshal, a medic, the main controller. See if you could get it out like that now, right? And you could have about 4 of them anyway, right? So here we have the offshore installation manager is in overall charge. She will be assisted by 2 unseen commander, one from drilling and one from process. So this is how it is in the offshore, or could be in the offshore industry. A permit controller, a radio operator, and an offshore installation supervisor, OIS. They have direct contact with onshore and the Coast Guard's especially important offshore service responsibilities are monitoring the weather condition, wind speed and direction, the positioning of standby boats, communication with the fire teams, and of course, training have to be done. Otherwise, nobody would really be competent if you just talk about it anyway, right? Drills have to be done, as inconvenient as they are, but lots of companies do these drills now and see it as a positive thing. It's meant for team building, and but lots of companies do that anyway, right? So I'm going to take it from here. Drills should be organized throughout the year. About 2 for the year is what you need, right? Over covering a range of possibilities, incidents, and conditions. If you want help doing it, just to let you know, we do this as a company. You could call me in if your company have never done a drill. We'll get you through the process and kind of set up the system for you all anyway, right? We have done bomb threats, we have done like casualty incidents, right? Fire, of course, anyway. So there are different types of drills, ranging from tabletop theoretical exercises. That's where you start from. Yeah, they start from there. They start from designating who is to do what, right? Which would help practice and verify problem solving skills, but nothing is as good as putting that skill and what you said you're going to do into practice. Nothing is as difficult then as somebody saying, in an emergency, I will go for Frank and I will pick him up, I'll put him on my back, and I will go down the flight of stairs. That's easy to say. But if you do a drill, of course, there are techniques, just to let you know, as large body as you are or as small frame as you are, there's a technique for you to carry somebody or you and somebody else. But there are techniques that could help somebody, based on their person's size and stature. There are techniques you can use, right? There are lifting techniques you could use. The medics here may know that, right? There are techniques two persons could use if you can't do it for yourself to get. But the only way to know that then, like just like using an extinguisher, somebody will say, well, I would use an extinguisher, but have you ever used one? Have you ever actually put out a fire with an extinguisher? Right? Have you ever put out a fire with an extinguisher? If you have, you'll be happy, you'll be surprised. It actually works enough. It works very rapidly. In fact, some people are surprised. The first time they use an extinguisher, they will, okay, well, it did really work, right? So all of those things we do too. We do fire training, right? For companies, go on our Facebook page, you'll see we have done quite a lot of that for companies as well, right? Call us in, give me the work. I actually need the work. I need the money, as they would say, right? And I would come to your company and we'll get it done, or you will get it done. Fire training is a nice training. Emergency response training is a nice training, folks. Nice training. When I mean people benefit, they benefit from how to handle a bomb threat, right? They ever know how to handle a bomb threat. It's not the way you handle a fire, It's not the way to handle. Do you know what's the main difference if somebody calling in a bomb threat or somebody calling in a fire threat? Do you know what's the main difference you have to do with them? If somebody call and said this is a bomb threat or this is a, like there's a fire or there's some kind of other emergency, what do you think is the main difference? It have 100 differences. Just tell you how interesting this one is. Anyone knows? Well, if somebody call your company and say there's a bomb threat, what do you do?
Evacuation. And then assessment.
Anybody else? So interesting, folks. Do you know one of the things you have to do is keep the person on the line? You have to keep that person on the line, right? You have to keep the person. Like if it's a fire or a chemical thing, yeah, you just kind of okay. You just start to hang up the phone and call fire services and ODPM, like ODPM or whatever. But if it's a bomb threat, you keep the person on the line. You keep them on the line. Anybody could say why? So that's why you need the training. Please call me. Say it again.
To prevent detonation.
No.
And to trace, track.
To get as much information about where it may be located and why it there, and you try to find out as much information as you possibly
Yeah,
can.
by keeping them on the line, you could figure out a lot of things from them. Like you could figure out, right? You could figure out. Well, we stop here for tonight because it finished there already, right? It's specific questions right there, right? So you could figure out, right? If this is a a middle-aged person, you could figure out by the way the person talking if this person is an educated person. And then you can say, this sounds like, in my mind, somebody that was working here before. So you keep them on the line, right? If the person, you could tell if it's like, I mean, forgive the bad, no, I wouldn't say that, but you could tell if it's an uneducated person there just playing a prank, or if it's an employee that has been hurt, fired, blocked from a promotion. You could actually pick that up. You could pick up, you could pick up a person, probably ethnicity by the way, like the person race them by the way they talk, right? You could actually pick up the person educational background by the way they talk. You keep the person on the line and then you hear a background sound, you hear a forklift beeping, and then you realize, wait, now this person just calling from downstairs. You understand? Or you hear boat horn that goes off, and then you realize, okay, this person calling from the docks, right? So there's lots of stuff. It's a huge difference between, that sort of an emergency than your regular emergencies. Another thing is that like with a fire, those kind of things anyway, you leave everything, right? And then you get to the muster point. But do you know in a bomb threat, you have to go for your bag? You have to go for your bag and go to the muster point. In a bomb threat, I'll say it again, you have to go for your bag, you have to go for your belongings and then go to the muster point. So by the time fire services come or the bomb squad come, then the one bag that remains, that will probably be it. That will probably, because who does that bag belong to? And if there's no bag, well then, if there's no bag, everybody took their bag, everybody took their stuff, then it was just a prank. But if there's one bag that remains and nobody could say who that bag was, well then that is your bomb right there, right? Folks will stuff, right? I just said a lot of these things are interesting. Not everything is book all the time. Hopefully you all understand that part of it is interesting as well. So it's not just fire then, and again, like the way you respond to even a chemical spill is different, right? It's different anyway. So I don't think I brought the register home, right? So I'm gonna grab a sheet of paper here and mark it on this today, right? We have 11 persons on. Folks, thanks for being here. I know it's never nice. I am as tired as you all, right, today. So I just calling the names, right? Akash, Alicia,
Present.
Akash present.
yeah, thanks, Akash. Alicia, Kayan, Christopher,
Alicia Sultan present.
yeah, Alicia Sultan present, yeah. Devon. Folks, have I been able to influence you all to read your book a bit? Because remember that was the teaching technique, eh? The teaching technique is not ready to use the book, enough. The teaching technique is to get you to use the book, right? Naveen, because that's the only way you learn, right? Yeah, Kerwin. It's easy to listen to me, but when you say you have to learn for yourself, and that's what you need to do, you need to learn for yourself, right? I have
Present.
Nigel. Okay, thanks. I have Rashad. And I have,
Present.
yeah, Shanil. Okay, thanks, Nigel, right? I'll see you back on Sunday. Sunday, we started the last chapter,
And
right?
Jessica.
Yes, Jessica, put your present. I'll put your present already. Yeah, all right, Jessica. Yeah. All right, folks, that's a wrap. I'll see you all back on Sunday. All the best, everyone. Bye.